You have a news feed, the AM edition. I'm Ayanda Nyati. Thank you very much for starting your day with us. Now, as we do at the beginning of each day, we give you a sense of what to expect insofar as the news cycle is concerned, not only in our diary, but certainly by taking a look at some of the most popular newspapers as well. And to help us with that purpose is our news editor, Zain Semmar, who joins us once again this morning to help us understand the details behind the headlines. Zain, once again, thank you very much for coming through. Let's begin with what we're tracking on Newzroom Afrika this morning.
Thank you, Ayanda. So on Newzroom Africa's diary this morning, we'll bring you the memorial service of the late Dr. Joseph Shabalala. A memorial service will be held at the in Pretoria, the Standard Bank Arena today. So we'll continue to cover. It's also President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared it a special official funeral for Mshengu. Also continuing today is our coverage of the Soraya Didat inquest. Yesterday we heard harrowing evidence of a fire and explosives expert into the possible conditions or circumstances leading to the fire that obviously killed Didat and her 4 kids almost a half a decade ago.
Right.
Also, big watch on our diary today is the expected release of the report into Enoch Mpianzi's death, the Parktown High boy school pupil. So we look forward to that report, including also on our diary is the court case of Dudu Myeni. So she's expected in court today. You'll remember quite a series of mishaps with that court process. Ms. Myeni at one point claiming that she didn't have enough money to travel to court. At the same time, Ms. Myeni faces quite an uphill battle given the kind of evidence and testimony that came out of the State Capture Commission and the witness this week. And then also in Cape Town, we're covering the COSATU March, where COSATU was called on the residents and people in Cape Town to come out and join them in a transport march, which they call against the state of the rail and transport services in Cape Town.
A lot of those stories, I'm pleased to say, will also be fleshing out on the show this morning, particularly anticipation ahead of the release of Enoch Mpianzi's death. We'll have the Teddy Bear Clinic in a studio with us because I imagine there's a lot of anticipation, but I wonder what the most constructive state of mind that we can work towards to is as we anticipate those findings. I think emotions will very rightly be riled up by whatever the MEC has to reveal today. But if we want to, clamp down on these kind of situations happening, we need experts to at least guide us about not only what to look forward to, but also what, to sort of guard against as we do that. So that's certainly, you want to sort of, stay around for that interview. We'll also be speaking to Outer, right? So the big moment or the significance about this conversation today is that Outer has essentially wrapped up their part of the argument in court, which means that there's almost nothing else for Dudu Myeni to do outside of appearing. Her lawyers had indicated, according to some reports, that she will be there today, and we want to find out from Outer what their implications are if she actually doesn't pitch yet again. So a lot of that will be given meaning throughout the show, so do stay around for that. Speaking about meaning making, some of the stories on the papers this morning are trying to do exactly that. I'll kick us off with the business day. If you didn't have enough bad news about, some of the monies that we're spending, they're reporting that disasters loan may cost the PIC up to 1.4 billion rand this morning. And this has to do with an investment that the PIC made into an American company. And it appears that the money that they sort of invested into this company, at least a part of it, amounting to about 1.4 billion rand, won't be recovered. And the long and the short of it is that this business, which is called it's a private equity firm started by 2 Americans, is essentially going under, as is the case with many other businesses. And it's a part of a business group called the Musa Group, which is headquartered in New York. And it's essentially filed for liquidation. In some instances, there's been job layoffs since about June last year. Some of those people who've been affected haven't received their severance packages packages yet. And so by many signals and indications, they might not be able to get the money they were hoping to get back. And there's obviously, once again, a backdrop to all of this, right? The PIC, will remember, we had all kinds of allegations coming out of the Party Commission about investments that were irregular into AO technologies and the likes. Talks about using funds from the PIC to inject into Eskom are also mounting. And now this 1.4 billion rand that it appears won't be received. Needless to say, of course, a lot of people are pushing back against the prospects of having people's pensions taken into Eskom, and I imagine this kind of development is certainly going to add weight to the argument that they're trying to make. So that's the business day for you this morning. The Star?
The Star is leading with 3 stories, Ayanda. PRASA coaches may be attached. The big implication there is from tomorrow, if this court process goes ahead, is that commuters will be stuck without a train service, because if this court process goes ahead, PRASA will not be able to run any train services.
My goodness.
Yes.
That is a disaster waiting to happen.
Not that, as if PRASA doesn't have enough issues of its own at the moment. So the story is basically about Mbita Consulting taking them to court over an unpaid debt of over 5 years, amounting to about 22 million. If this, like I say, process goes ahead, big problems for commuters traveling in Joburg tomorrow. Also, the second story is Mama Bolo. This is now Boy Mama Bolo, the ANC MP, faces heat from the ANC. So the ANC's Pule Mabi yesterday announcing that his party will institute an investigation into how it came about that this gender-based violence issue was used for politicking in Parliament for the last 2 days. The other story that's also on the front page of the Star is basically the family of ex-Bosasa chief Gavin Watson complaining that they have not yet received a toxicology report. They have not received any real updates regarding Gavin Watson's death. They say it's 6 months down the line. They're still waiting on even an accident report. They've obviously hired in private investigators of their own, which, according to this report, have drawn up 9 diagrams of how this accident could possibly have happened. You'll remember this captured the imagination of South Africa, because Gavin Watson was then accused as being involved in all kinds of irregular deals with Bosasa, etc. And this accident happened a day before he was supposed to give evidence at the State Capture Commission.
Absolutely. I still think some people to this day believe that Gavin Watson is not necessarily a man who's no longer with us, but was able to obfuscate in one way or another. Needless to say that it's all speculation, but you're absolutely right. I mean, no better way to put it. It certainly captured the imagination of many a South African and many a film screenwriter, I imagine. There might be a movie in the works in the near future. Let's move on to the Citizen. So obviously the countdown to Tito Mbowene's speech is certainly gaining a whole lot more traction. Already experts are weighing in about some of the possible announcements that may come from it. And the Citizen this morning honing in on one of those possibilities, and that is the chances of having a VAT increase. So in a context where the fiscus is overburdened and, it appears that there isn't an ability to squeeze money from anywhere else to try and relieve that burden, you and I, as taxpayers, become an easy scapegoat. And experts weighing in this morning that the chances of an increase in VAT are very, very real. And again, this comes with an incredible amount of context, right? So Stats SA had announced that the consumer price inflation had increased to about 4% year on year in December. That has implications typically, if you follow the sort of knock-on effects of a value-added tax increase. Experts from PwC quoted as estimating that the increase could be from about 15 to 16% and will obviously result in revenue that they're estimating will amount to about 25 billion rand for the fiscus. As we say every year, the saying about whether or not we should be able to tighten our belt is certainly becoming a cliche, because there's no more tightness. There's no more room to pull the belt a bit tighter, So, the type of taxes that are likely to be affected, they're saying are corporate tax and personal income tax, which is essentially, tax on the amount of money you get to take home. And again, this will also have a ripple effect because, again, economics 101, if your tax goes up, you have less money to spend. Less consumer spending means that there isn't much activity in the economy, and there's a spiral effect. But also, the value of your money actually goes down if the inflation goes up, right? So what you're able to get for 100 rand, and you don't need an economist to explain this to you, you're feeling it. What you're able to get for 100 rand becomes lesser, you know, even though it's still the same 100 rand note. And so, you know, once again, I think we don't need anybody to remind us how much work the finance minister has cut out for him. Needless to say, but we'll still have an expert on the show with you today, giving us at least a bit more context to this prospect and what else the finance minister ought to focus on. Let's look at the Sowetan.
Sowetan is leading with a story about why a father killed his 4 kids. And they have this story then a bit in more detail on page 6. About a story about a woman who apparently went to the police station and then got turned away. So the story highlights a few issues. Again, talking about how police handle claims and allegations of domestic abuse. So apparently this woman was turned away when she complained initially that her husband had been abusing her, he was threatening her. The story tells about how he took the 4 children and alleges that his wife cheated on him, and he claims that that is why he killed the 4 children by beating them with nails in the back of their heads. So quite a horrific story. But I think next to that, they have a story about the killing of children reaching a crisis in South Africa. And I think that is, for me, the more important story about why this kind of thing is happening, what are the conditions that leads to this kind of family killings, and basically the kind of research that are coming out, they're speaking about, and even if it's intentional or unintentional, it tells a tale of desperation and depression.
Yeah, and a context where I guess we haven't been able to get to the bottom of why people would resort to weaponizing kids. Because the stories usually have a common thread around it, right? Some form of domestic dispute between the parents, whether it's a lack of trust, whether, again, it's constraints of any other kind, that lead to the children being centralized as a weapon for that. And it sadly ties quite well to the ongoing inquiry into Didat and, you know, her 4 children, who the allegation is died at the hands of their father. You know, it really is quite a difficult situation. So
which brings into sharp focus, I mean, the issue of politicians and the theatrics that they are playing with in Parliament and in society now, in real life. This is the kind of lived experience of South Africans. Absolutely. So it makes even more, brings into sharper focus the conduct of parliamentarians when they are in Parliament.
In the quick minute that we have, let me hone in on a story on page 2 of the Citizen as well. You might not be able to see it there at home, but it's a story about a crèche which apparently has about 89 taps around, but only one of them has running water. And this is forcing some of the community members to travel quite a long distance to try and you know, get to the bottom of that sort of situation. And this crèche is apparently located just outside Cosmo City, which is quite ironic because it's quite an affluent area in some instances, and they're having to deal with this very basic crisis. But that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Zain Semmar, our news editor right here on Newzroom Africa. So, still to come on the show this morning, Outer's Head of Legal Affairs, that's Stephanie Pick, will weigh in on former SAA Chair Dudumieni being expected to take the stand in the North Gauteng High Court this morning. We'll bring you details in just a moment. To stay with us.